So this is 5-minute revision, and we're looking at paper 2, question 5, the writing question, obviously worth half the marks, 40 marks, so a very important question. Make sure you leave yourself time for it, okay? So you get 24 marks for content and organisation. So this is the points that you make, how you organise it, the discourse markers that you put in, how persuasive your language is. And then 16 marks for technical accuracy. So this is your spelling, punctuation and grammar. Do make sure that you plan your answer. It's important to plan because obviously that links to the 24 marks. If you plan your answer out first, you're more likely to have a good structure and good organisation. And also leave time to check your work at the end. So that relates to the SPAG. Going through at the end, correcting a few spellings, putting in a bit of punctuation can really improve your marks. So from the 45 minutes for this question, you might actually spend 30 minutes writing your answer and the other 15 planning and checking, and that's absolutely what you should do. I mean, the chief examiner from AQA has actually said to us they want students to write less and plan and organise more. So that doesn't mean that you actually get marked on your plan. Any planning you do, you just cross through and it doesn't get marked, but obviously the evidence of that planning is in how well organised your answer is. Okay, so let's have a look at the question. Obviously this is related to the text and we're still looking at the November resit paper. It says education is not just about what school you go to or what qualifications you gain, it's also about what you learn from your experiences outside of school. Now this statement that they give you is just to sort of get you thinking, and then sometimes you have to argue for or against, or sometimes it just says explain your views, and this is an explain your views one. So it says write a speech for your school or college Leavers Day to explain what you think makes a good education. So you don't have to agree with this, okay? It's saying what you think makes a good education, but if you're a bit stuck for ideas, then this statement here can help you. Okay, so before you start writing, you want to try and think of kind of 3 points that you can make. That's the minimum really you need for a decent length answer. So 3 points on what makes a good education. So for example, your first point, maybe you might think it's good teaching. Okay, so you can give an example of that. So remember, for each one, you want your point, you want your example, and you need to explain that example. If you do PEE for each, you'll end up with a decent sized paragraph. So say you think good education, good teaching is important, give an example of good teaching. Maybe there's a teacher from school that you remember, or something that's happened to you at college, or you can just make something up about what makes a good teacher and good teaching, okay, and explain it a bit further. So you might think that this explanation is a repeat of your point, but you need to go into more detail. So if you just say good teaching is important, for example, I had a teacher at school who really cared about the students and went out of their way to help the students whenever they wanted to and always had time to talk to us, and then explain a bit more. This meant that the students were more enthusiastic about doing the work, and it meant they felt more comfortable in class and didn't mind going to the lessons, so that would make a good point there. So you have to think, of 3 points that you can make, and do this before you start writing, please. It's really important that you plan it before. Even if it's just in your head, if you don't actually want to write it down, do think about 3 things that you can say, but I do encourage you to write it down somewhere. Okay, so think of your 3 points, think of an example you can use for each one, and think maybe of how you're going to explain each one. Okay, so that's the first thing. Then, as you're writing, remember you've got to be persuasive and descriptive. So the main thing that they say and they talk about is variety. Okay, so don't use the same words all the time. For example, here we've got good education, but you want to find different words for good. You don't want to just say, oh, this is good and that's good and this should be good. Variety is important in vocabulary, variety is important in punctuation, and variety is important in your sentence forms. Now, don't be scared of sentence forms, okay? All we mean is have some short sentences, some long sentences, some questions, some exclamations, And if you do that, you will automatically get a variety of punctuation in there as well. Okay, and try and be persuasive. You're trying to, persuade people. If this is a speech, persuade people of what makes a good education. So you might want to use some triples in there, use some emotive language, maybe use some rhetorical questions, just things to make your writing clearer and make your point of view clearer. Okay, so plan it, 3 good points, point, evidence, explain, and make sure you get a good variety of language in there.